Okay, we are live, and welcome to this webinar which we're running just for CentralNic's registry clients. I have the pleasure of introducing firstly my colleague Kelly, who is head of policy for the registry division, and also Andy Bates, who is chief. You have to remind me, Andy, what's your job description? Job title these days?
This way, Chief Sustainability Officer. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Andy is the Chief Sustainability Officer for Global Cyber Alliance, and obviously we are here today to talk about domain trust. Obviously, our registry partners may already be aware of domain trust because we might have talked to you about it already, and we've posted things on our website and run webinars for registrars as well. But we wanted to run a private session just for our registry clients to give you the opportunity to learn about what domain trust is, how CentralNic is helping the Global Cyber Alliance on this project, and what the opportunities and benefits are for you as a registry partner and of CentralNic. So, Andy, if you wouldn't mind, I will pass things over to you, and you can give your presentation.
Thank you very much. And I think, Gavin, if we just present for about 30 minutes, then we're going to kick about a bit of Q&A between ourselves and the audience. And I should say, one of my colleagues has joined us. He's currently off camera, Jonathan Frost, who's seconded from the City of London Police to GCA, and that will become obvious while we've done that in a second. So pressing the Start Presenting button, away we go. So thanks for joining. As Gavin said, we're going to talk about domain trust. I'll give you a little bit of background on GCA first of all, if that's okay. Just finding the next button. Talking of City of London Police, we were founded by City of London Police, New York District Attorney, and the Centre for Internet Security in 2015. Our mission, put simply, is to combat international cybercrime, which of course encompasses fraud and many other online behaviours. And we do that by, in many ways, creating free tools and free solutions, which I'll touch on in a second. So today, I should say registries, by the way, apologies for that. This is really our agenda, one thing we want to try and get out of today. So how domain trust can help you to increase your brand reputation, hopefully increase margin, lower risk, improve compliance, etc. So moving forward. So as I mentioned, our mission is to build a trustworthy internet. We do that by providing solutions for end users, which are free, easy to use, private and globally applicable, but we also provide platforms which in many ways the internet is sort of missing today, and domain trust is the key one and the first one in that kind of section. To summarize the solution so far, many of you are familiar with DMARC. We've been disciples of DMARC and produced DMARC wizards for some time. We have a GCA cybersecurity toolkit for small businesses, which is probably more interesting to the registrar community to be able to hand those out to small businesses. Many of you may have heard of Quad 9, which I'll reference a lot today. We co-created that with IBM and PCH. Quad 9, if you haven't heard of it, is a protective DNS service. It's an Anycast global DNS resolver, 99 countries, 168 cities. And in the Quad 9 database, there's between 5 and 6 million known criminal domains. So if you change your DNS to 9.9.9.9, which is why it's called Quad 9, the user or you are not allowed to get to that domain, hence you're protected. Last year we blocked 25 billion cybercrime attempts, so that would have been user clicks on phishing link, user downloads of malware, or users maybe inadvertently tripped across a botnet. We have several ISPs who use that platform, and I think famously the New York free Wi-Fi service, and there's a coffee shop Wi-Fi network all across Switzerland, the classic example uses of the Quad 9 platform. And then finally AID, which is our automated IoT defense ecosystem. So today, though, the newest thing in the portfolio is domain trust. A metaphor I often use, and I guess I'm allowed to say this, having been a CTO in EMEA for a very big global telco, is if the water industry was like the internet, we would pump dirty water to your house, we would sell you a water purification plant for your kitchen, you still get a virus, and we all blame the Russians, or even worse, we probably blame the users. So what domain trust does is, in our terms, tries to go upstream. So think of this as us attempting to chlorinate or fluoridate the water at the reservoir as opposed to clean it at the end user's premises. You can clearly see that the toolkits which we build for end users, as well as these kind of platform projects, together produce a much more holistic cyber hygiene and cyber capacity implementation. So what does domain trust do? We can maybe talk in conversation about the narrative of how we get here, but we share data. So the original hypothesis was we would take data from law enforcement people like our founders. Europol are also one of our partners and hopefully soon to be Interpol. Share it with the registries and registrars, and put simply, you, the registry community, help to take domains down and the registrars. We maintain the trust and the integrity of that data. So think of us really as the mailman or woman or postman or woman. We move data between those communities so that everybody can trust the data and share it with the appropriate level of respect. We built not only a platform but a community, and you'll see some of the members of the community so far. There are 30 people who have either connected or promised to connect or utilizing our data. One of the benefits of being an international not-for-profit is, as we're not trying to monetize this data and we're not competitive with any of you or anybody on this call, we're in a unique position. So I guess some people think of us as the World Health Organization for cyber in a way. We hopefully hold that trusted high ground. This is also about scale. A UK CISO from a company who will remain nameless once said to me, he said, I regularly get attacked by a Panamanian domain. And he said, I'm always emailing the Panamanian registry email, domain abuse email, and they never reply back. And I kind of said, well, you emailing them once a week about one bad domain, they must have 40,000 emails in their inbox every day in 20 different languages with 10,000 false positives. Being able to bring all of that kind of data together in machine readable form at scale, people could and should take action. Individual CISOs and law enforcement people knocking on your front door every day asking about just one domain to be taken down is painful for you and frankly painful for them as well, which is kind of my point earlier about we really want to help you to streamline your businesses and to be more operationally efficient. As you see in a second, and we'll probably move on quickly, we're all about transparency. So when actually Gavin and I kind of first kicked the concept of this project about, and I was in ICANN 65 at Morocco, and we met with many of your peers and the registrar community, we thought we'd have to build big, complicated algorithms. But Gavin and many of the Partners Council was really just show us all the data you've got. We, the registries, will make the decision as to what gets taken down. So we've taken that on board. And then finally, working with our law enforcement partners, this is really all about people taking action, either blocking domains or taking them down, which again, we'll give you some worked examples pretty soon. So moving on. So what does the platform do? So I'll just pick a few things out here. I mentioned Quad 9. So if anybody gives us data, and by the way, any of you as registries could give us data on domains you've taken down, we'll share that with Quad 9. So 200 million users across 99 countries and 168 domains is a pretty good proving ground. If they deem that the data is worth, the domain is worth blocking, then blocking across that community, and let's say it stays blocked for a week or so, is a great reference base to inform you that those domains should be taken down. Granular taxonomy, which we'll talk about in a second. I mentioned we're an independent, neutral convening party. In terms of our scale, we are the people who built Quad 9. So very much my dream after we launched Quad 9 in 2017 was what next. So I guess think of this as the people who built you a 4x4 petrol engine have now built you a V6 diesel or a battery powered car. It's people we've used some of the skills and the software and the techniques and actually some of the scars that we acquired whilst building Quad 9 and loaded that into the Domain Trust platform. And then clearly, we can take data transnational. So I mentioned Panama. We'll mention several other people globally in a second. It's a unique position to be in this kind of space, and equally working with people like ICANN, the UK ICO, and Interpol helps us in that space. And then finally, we did some research with some students from NCSC in both 2019 and 2020, and we found quite a lot of TLD copies, which again, you'll see, I hope, in the next slide that shows how if you see a domain that's malicious, the chances of there being other copies of that domain in other TLDs is actually higher than we first predicted. And so by being able to scan the whole TLD universe helps us to inform other registries and registrars of the same criminal intent. So just to move on here. So let's show you some actual criminal data. All these domains don't exist anymore on the internet. Please go and check them now just to prove that point. Point of me showing you this slide, and this would be better for audience participation. and I guess to a non-registry audience, they really buy into this slide. Straight away, you can see obviously hexadecimal domains, so classically DGA or classically controlling malware or botnets. But you can see the pattern that we see the same domain exists across blackfriday.feedback, the hosting.org, and .tickets. So I can almost guarantee if I see the same domain in any of our platforms, Quad9 or Domain Trust, against 3 of those TLDs, it almost certainly exists in the other 2. So everything on this slide is malicious, but the audience participation question would be, if I said to you, would you trust 0097E6 blah 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 .xyz.com.org? .org obviously is there, but anything. The answer is you probably wouldn't or shouldn't. In other words, you would be at least suspicious about that. So really, Domain Trust addresses the concept of malicious domains and suspicious domains. So we built this really simple taxonomy. We plagiarized some of this from international law enforcement and counterterrorism operations. A, B, or C is the category of people who provide us data. A is the highest, typically NCSC, DHS, law enforcement kind of folks. C is the lowest, classic crowdsourcing. And you'll hear about Scam Advisor and Spam House in a second. 1, 2, and 3. 1 is this is definitely criminal in the provider's opinion. 2 is it's probably criminal. 3 is it's suspicious. And then -1 is the allow list. This is important for several reasons. CentralNic own Brand Shelter, for example, so there is a known list of known good domains. But also it's important to have a reference base so we can check for false positives. In our memorandum of understanding of people who join the platform, any provider, whether A, B, or C, who consistently sends us false positives above a certain threshold will be downgraded. And this is important. So when you as a registry see a domain is A1, you need to be 100% confident you can take that down without any fear of retribution. However, if you see 16 different sources are all declaring a domain to be C3, you probably shouldn't take any action at all. In fact, I would counsel you not to, but it's a thing to keep an eye on and maybe throw into your anti-DNS abuse process. And so there's obviously plenty of shades of grey through this matrix as you go forward. But one of the feedback we've got from the communities and from CentralNic as one of our lead partners in this platform is just the simplicity of this domain, this structure is really helping people. We debated, should we use MISP, should we use Stix, should we use Taxi? So all of these things are designed to do other things really well. They're not great at moving about basic domain information. So we just said, let's start with that, build it on a JSON interface, which clearly is a no-brainer, and away we go. So just to kind of get close to a sum up, so there are several things happening here. One is we take domains from people who know about something's bad, being CISOs or law enforcement, share it with people who can do something about it. That's typically you and the audience today, and Quad9, and you'll see some telcos involved in a few seconds' time. We also go and look for other low confidence data. People give us that, we scan for that. By gluing multiple sources of low confidence data together, by corroborating that data, we then create more high confidence data, which allows more takedowns to happen, and therefore also allows for discovery of more criminal sites. And so we create this kind of virtuous circle. Just to complete the story and go all the way back to the GCA portfolio. So we do this today with many of the banks that we interface with as partners. We're particularly strong with some of the banks in the UK. The banks distribute the toolkit to their customers. Hopefully they implement Quad9. The banks are also receiving lots of cybercrime and fraud calls, probably more than the police in the UK. Those domains are giving to us. So we receive typically 500 domains a day from the banking community. In fact, I think that's risen recently. Although a small number, because we have 2.6 million domains in our database today, 25% of those we know about already. 75% are unknown to either Quad9 or Domain Trust. So I think the fact that we get a reasonable volume of domains which don't exist in 2 other massive databases is good news. That data is shared with people like Quad9, who can then choose to block those domains if they wish, but also is shared with you, the registry and the registrar community, so that they can choose to take the domains down at source. Clearly, helping 200 million users in Quad9 to be better protected is great. Helping the other 4.8 billion people on the planet is really the end goal here. But hopefully that shows you how the portfolio of GCA solutions may look a little bit disjointed, but actually we've pulled them together as part of this project. So we really want people to get involved, and this is the list of people involved today. CentralNic and ICANN and BT were our 3 foundation partners. We can demonstrate the platform if we get time and the right format to do that. BT are blocking 1.7 million domains in their platform, and so they've shared those with us. So in discussions with people like New Zealand Telecom, so why would they not be blocking the same malicious domains in their world as BT are? Now you could argue New Zealand people only go to .nz domains, which of course is a complete fallacy. But again, back to the point of criminals will use a TLD to maybe target their particular audience. There's just a lot of sense of why wouldn't you just block the same things that BT are blocking? So the platform helps to facilitate that. .org is clearly a name within the community. .eu, as URID, you'll be familiar with. The Cyber Defence Alliance is a collection of UK banks and telcos. And Netcraft do the takedowns on behalf of UK government and the banking industry. People like Netcraft are clearly very precious about their data. So with them, they tend to be an enrichment partner. In other words, if we spot something which is suspicious and it's already known in their database, they will help us to escalate it from, let's say, a category 2 to a category 1. And one partner I'll call out now called Scam Advisor, based in the Netherlands. They've given us, I think, around 600,000 domains. They're a classic category C provider. So people go to Scam Advisor to check out if a domain is suspicious, whether it's got a great reputation as a shopping site, but they also report crime. So the fact that we're getting actually across the whole strata of the -1, 1, 2, and 3 from Scam Advisor, really great input. So really great source of crowdsourcing. In fact, myself now, when I get a dubious domain, okay, I send it to NCSC as a UK citizen, but I typically log it with Scam Advisor, knowing that it's ultimately going to go back into our platform. And then to square that story, the UK Information Commissioner's Office, we've got an MOU with them. So I'm proud to say that I've signed an MOU both with ICANN and with the UK ICO. If you sat there thinking that sharing data is dangerous and you're going to get in trouble with GDPR, especially after everything that happened with Whois, having the ICO on board with us with this project is brilliant. They're helping us with our DPIA, data protection information assessment, but they've also committed to give us data which they have in their database. So if you have a breach involving personal information in the UK, it is mandatory that you have to report that to the ICO. So we're hoping we'll get some victim data from that around attack sources and be able to load that into the platform. More importantly, the ICO Sandbox project, which we will publish a joint report with the ICO in September this year, is about augmenting that data set. Today, we only move domains. Imagine how powerful this could be if we move registrant data. Now, clearly, that involves GDPR, which is why we've got the ICO working with us in this sandbox environment. But the power of taking the credit card, the address, the email, most of which are falsified by the criminal. But I think we all know criminals, other than the really dedicated ones like maybe the Wolf of Wall Street and nation state attacks, tend to use the same artifact several times. So they may use the same false address 100 times or the same newly invented email 1,000 times. So being able to get into a richer data set gives us much more power as a force multiplier. So finally, of the 30 people we have on board, the ICO is one of the ones you can guess that we're really proud to have working with us today. So I think that's probably a good point to conclude, and then maybe kick about some questions, and or as I think we've got plenty of time, just looking at the clock, we can also always subject to what Gavin and Kelly think, we can demonstrate the platform and you can actually see some live data and make the whole thing come alive. But entirely your choice. But thank you for everyone's time so far. I think you're on mute, Gavin.
Of course I am. Of course I am. Thank you, Andy. Yeah, we do have time. So if you want to give the demo, then by all means do. One thing I would caveat to our registry clients is I'm going to once Andy's given his demo, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're going to make the domain trust data available through our existing platforms and solutions for our registry clients. So I think it's worthwhile them seeing what you've got and how it works, but the actual experience that our registry partners might have when they come to interface with us is going to be somewhat different.
Brilliant. Well, while I'm queuing that up, I should also say one of the names that we should put on the slide is IQ Global and people like Cyware, who I know are big helping in the industry. So having them as effectively domain trust enabled sets of software, I think is a great move forward. So feel free, Gavin or Kelly or Jonathan, to ask questions or kick things about while I work out how we can present live from a Google Chrome browser on your platform, and then get this in position.
I think there's a little icon screen share on next to the mute button.
Here we go.
Earlier.
Yes, let's live dangerously. Oh, I love that. Cool. So here we have the domain trust platform. You can see this now, Gavin, please, because I can't see you anymore.
Yes, can see it.
Great. Yeah. So this is really meta-based, which we just put on the front end of a JSON API. So if you were to join with us in Domain Trust, this isn't what you see, but it's a way of visualizing the raw data. So as you can see, actually 2.59 million domains. We had a bit of a cleanup the other day. People like APWG, BT, you can see some kind of cool names here. Let's look into Scam Advisor in the Netherlands, as we mentioned them. Let's flip into that again now. Okay, cool. So let me first talk you through the taxonomy. So here we've got some domains. Here's the provider. These are all classified as 2, so clearly in the suspicious, not malicious domain. We have a source flag, and this is important to prevent loops. So if Kelly finds a bad domain and she tells Jonathan and Gavin it's bad, Jonathan, Gavin tell Andy they found a bad domain. Andy thinks he's heard it from 2 independent sources. Actually, it came from the original source. So we ask all the providers to flag E if it's external, and then to name the source, or S if it's themselves. In this case, because it's Scam Advisor's own analysts and their algorithm, they've listed S for self and then the name of themselves. A means it's active. We also have T for taken down, S for suspended, B for blocked, and then N for non-existent. Non-existent is clearly to capture DGA or domains which we know are going to be registered, but we haven't got that yet. This flag here, if this is blank, it's pure cyber. And by that, we define as a botnet or malware. So computer to computer, no human involved. F stands for fraud. So in this case, this is a classic phishing scam where a human being, layer 8 in the OSI 7-layer strategy, has looked at an email, maybe clicked on a link, gone to a site where they've loaded some credentials using fingers and keyboard and hands and eyes. So generally a good way of categorizing fraud. Over here, we can see that Scam Advisor is C-level provider. So they don't get to change that. They do get to change the 1, 2, or 3. And then over here, this determines whether Quad 9 is blocking this domain or not. So here you can see classic domains. If I flip back and show you a slightly different example, so let's look at BT. So in here, I almost guarantee later on you'll see a whole load of hexadecimal sources. So there we go. And if we look quickly enough, we could find some of the sources we talked about earlier. We showed you on the slides. We could look at the CentralNic ones, Gavin, if you're okay with that, the ones that you've loaded before. Actually, no, let's jump into PIR. I think that's probably a good example. So this illustrates the T flag. So these are domains which have already been taken down. Interesting for PIR, they have given us, I think, around 6,000 domains. If I parse .org within the platform, we find 70,000. So I think that's an example of the potential delta between an existing and operational anti-abuse platform working in isolation versus the potential that people go through.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I just wanted to just follow up on what you said there. So I just wanted to point out, .org aren't just a consumer of the data that comes from Domain Trust; they're also contributing to it.
Yeah, exactly.
So and the reason why they're contributing to it is because of what Andy mentioned before during his presentation about looking for similar names across other TLDs. So it's not enough just for us to kind of blindly consume the data that we receive. We also want to be, and we will be, sharing data that we receive about abusive domains, so that if baddomain.xyz is found independently of Domain Trust, we can tell Domain Trust about it, so that the same name under a different TLD can also be checked and and flagged as a potentially suspicious name for the registry operator of that TLD to take action on.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Well said. And I think a great example of why is somebody sharing with us domains which they've already taken down. The point being is that the rest of you, as fellow registries in this equation, can then see, well, somebody's just trying to register the same domain but across a different TLD. So exactly. This one we're just showing you is from the Cyber Defence Alliance, so a collection of UK banks. So you'll see things that are very banky related, but there we've got royalmail.site, and we've all seen a lot of scams happening recently across the postal delivery companies, and there's a whole load of schmishing as well as phishing that's happening in that space. The CDA have around 16 analysts provided to them by their member bank. So classification of 1, they're a B-level provider, which we'll show you over here. Classification of 1. So I would commend that you should seriously think about having a conversation with these domain the domain registrants, I guess. But certainly from a Quad 9 point of view, I can see no reason why they wouldn't be blocking those, and that's clearly something we're working on. Here you can see active being flagged again as fraud, and then over here, this is a useful point to illustrate where it's flagged as true is where Quad 9's blocking the domain already. False means this is kind of brand new news. And then over here, clearly we have the TLD.
So Andy, just another question about the Quad 9 blocked. Does that number stay true even if that's really psychedelic? I'm impressed by that.
It's very Doctor Who, isn't it? Yeah.
Does the Quad 9 blocked flag stay true even if it's removed from the Quad 9 block list? So will it be removed if it's a false positive? Would that stay true and then the false positive become true?
And if I understand the question, no, it gives you an accurate representation. So if there is a false positive and Quad 9 stop blocking, actually 2 things should happen. One is the block flag should go to false. The other is if a false positive is discovered, it should go to -1. Right. And then that effectively puts it into this enshrined place, because the last thing anybody wants to do is have a false positive is bad enough, but a repeat false positive is, go straight to court and do not pass go. So again, the point of the allow list, I guess formerly known as a whitelist, is these are the ones that should be protected. So CentralNic's in there, our domain's in there. Any false positives would flip over to real state within Quad 9. I should say, you're all probably thinking, so what's the point of Quad 9 if domain trust is going to be so successful? Clearly, there will be some domains which will never talk to us with domain trust. North Korea as the example that I'm probably happy to quote on stage. The other thing which Quad 9 does is, if a legitimate website is infected with malware and basically taking down the internet, Quad 9 will block it. So if bbc.co.uk becomes the world's biggest malware distribution site overnight and has been compromised, they will block for the sake of protecting their users. Clearly, none of us would sanction bbc.co.uk being taken down on any of our watch. So there is a complementary delta there, and therefore I think that's maybe one thing to be slightly aware of, which is why we wouldn't always say please take down everything that Quad 9 blocks, but the inverse you can see could be true.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, so we do have some questions that have come in, and we'll get to them in a moment. But we did want to just talk about how CentralNic is working with Domain Trust, quite apart from simply supporting the project and running webinars like this. As I'm sure you're aware, if you're listening to this, as a GTLD registry operator, or often as a CCTLD registry operator, you will have an abuse monitoring service in place. So with the GTLDs, obviously, there is a kind of contractual obligation for you to do systematic abuse monitoring, and many of our CCTLD clients have taken the same option as well. We have worked with a number of third-party services. For example, and Andy mentioned IQ Global, who are very good at providing this service. They provide a very integrated management system as well. And we also have worked with other companies like iThreat as well. And we provide services to our clients through using those. What we wanted to do was go above and beyond simply outsourcing, and we wanted to create a system that was complementary to the value-added services that are being provided by our partners such as IQ Global. So once we had decided that we wanted to support the development of the Domain Trust product, we then needed to work out how to make use of that, the access that but doing so gave us. So you can expect as a registry client to start seeing some of this stuff surface in the interfaces and the APIs that we provide you in the near future. The first thing we need to do is start collecting that data. So what we're doing at the moment is building the infrastructure needed to pull data from the Domain Trust platform and store it in our registry database alongside all the other registration data that we store. We're also working with other sources of information. Sometimes we'll be able to sort of bounce that back up into Domain Trust, and we will where we can. But as Andy's mentioned, sometimes this data is proprietary, and there are rules about whether we can and can't share it with third parties. But the idea is to bring it to bring everything into a centralized repository with all of that data. And then what we can do after that is basically dependent on the needs of our client. Some of our clients will have their own in-house existing abuse monitoring systems, in which case what we'll do is essentially just pass the data through to them through the registry API. And so if Domain Trust notifies us of a potentially malicious domain name, we can then notify our client, and our clients using their own systems can make a call as to whether or not they want to suspend the domain. But we also are looking at potentially implementing a policy engine that will allow our clients to specify what action we should or shouldn't take depending on their own risk appetite. Risk appetite around false positives primarily, because obviously it'd be very easy for us to simply ban everything or block everything that gets reported to us. So this might be a kind of scoring mechanism where we take the matrix that Andy's described and set rules about what to do if a domain falls into one of those 9 or 12 positions on the matrix, which might be to suspend the name, to restore the name, obviously, if it's appearing on the -1 list, to notify the registrar and ask them to investigate the name and take action if they think it's appropriate, or simply to report it so that the report can be reviewed manually and then decision taken out of band. So there are a number of different ways that we'll be working to do those steps. And registry partners can expect to see some of that stuff visible in the new portal and also through the registry API as we go forward. The second part of our partnership with the Domain Trust is also reporting data back in. So what we also want to do is start notifying the Domain Trust system of domains that get suspended using our API by our registry partners. And obviously we want to make sure that that there is no kind of infinite loop where we report something to Domain Trust and then Domain Trust dutifully reports it back to us, and we kind of go round and round. So we have to do a little bit of work on that. We also won't do it unless we get approval from you as our registry partner to share the data that you're voluntarily submitting to us when you suspend a domain. And it's probably worth stating that because none of this data will be coming from us directly, we will not report it as being self-sourced. So the Domain Trust platform will see it as being potentially coming from some unknown third party. So that's the kind of overview of what this will look like for our registry partners. We do have a couple of questions, and I'm going to ask, just going to put them to Andy and to Kelly as well, if appropriate. So the first question actually I've just answered, which was how do I get access to the system? And the system, as I said before, will be integrated into our own registry system, and also I should have mentioned this actually, I didn't. IQ Global, as a partner of the Domain Trust system, will also be providing access to this the data through their through their abuse monitoring system. So the next question is from another one of our clients, and the question was, how should a CCTLD registry verify reports from law enforcement agencies they're not familiar with? So I think what this is about is CCTLD registries often have a relationship with the local law enforcement in their own country, and they're a little bit wary sometimes of acting on requests from law enforcement from different jurisdictions. So the Domain Trust system is receiving reports from law enforcement that may be, kind of, for geopolitical reasons, potentially people might not be entirely comfortable about receiving that information. So does the Domain Trust system give you more information about who the ultimate source of the report is, and is there enough there for a CCTLD registry to make a call as to whether or not they want to take action?
So it's a good question. Would you like me to pick that up first, or
if you wouldn't mind, yes.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the dream, and we've got this conversation going on with both New Zealand, Canada, and Saudi Arabia as we speak. Is as you say, yes, the CCTLD is probably tightly coupled, should be tightly coupled with its local in-country cert, its local in-country telco provider. I would love that if the cert and the telco and the CCTLD all talk through domain trust, then they're still sharing the same information they're sharing today. The benefit is, however, if Interpol or Europol or City of London Police or New York District Attorney get to see the same data and they're also investigating the same domain, and they signal back to say, yeah, we've seen www.andysbaddomain.de, let's say, then my vote would be that provides a lot more corroborating information. And again, as we said, and sorry to keep picking on the Kiwis, I guess, with this, but why wouldn't New Zealand Telecom block the same things that BT blocks in the UK backbone? My mother, who's got a BT broadband connection, bless her, doesn't know that 1.7 million bad domains are being stopped from attacking her. I want my relatives in New Zealand to have the same level of protection because, ironically, they're likely to go to the same .com English-speaking domains. So yeah, I think there's that angle. And the other thing, I mentioned I've worked in telco, and obviously we had to interface with law enforcement, get angry about websites and domains and hosting, and dealing with 100 different police officers every week using 100 different formats and 100 different emails and sometimes 20 different languages is just painful for all of us. So, you know, I feel the pain that you will be feeling, and if you're running an anti-abuse desk, if we or you can persuade them to use domain trust as their API to pump that data into you, it means they've also got one consistent interface to deal with all of the other registries on the planet, which has to be easier for them, but it also just makes it more slick for you, which is kind of our earlier point about if this can help you to reduce costs or improve margin, which I think is great that City of London Police, as one of these police forces, has seconded Jonathan onto our team and onto this project as a kind of embodiment of. They actually had the idea about taking domains down which were related to copyright fraud. But again, doing that with one police officer in London using email and fax and spreadsheet is just a bit kludgy. So JSON API is a way of talking, hopefully, ultimately with 195 CCTLDs, if we can get that far, kind of has to be the way to go. I don't know if Kelly's got anything to add to that.
I don't. I'm just queuing up your next question.
Oh, brilliant. Go for it.
Okay. We have a registry client asking, as new threats emerge, how will GCA help registries identify the most recent new threats?
Good question. Jonathan, I don't know if you want to talk about some of the folks we've been talking to, but if you want to come off mute and dive into that, because I know you were looking at people like URLscan.io as an example.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think we're really mindful that, domains are an address, really, to all intents and purposes. It's somewhere where someone parks their criminal infrastructure, to all intents and purposes. But that criminal infrastructure is very mobile. To the point you made earlier, Andy, around the postal-oriented phishing scams that we've seen of late, the volumes were really very significant in terms of the number of domains, the number of TLDs that they were utilizing in order to propagate those phishing forms to all intents and purposes. But the thing that was common to all of them is the content. They were all structurally similar, both in terms of the information they collected from the victims, but also the actual page content. So the presence of a trademarked logo, for instance. So one of the things that we're also looking at is the opportunity for us to work with third parties who have existing techniques and technology in respect of those structurally similar questions. For instance, URLscan.io, which is a German-based company, it has its own algorithms and its own processes to identify where a site contains a trademark, such as Royal Mails in the case of the UK. It could just as easily be Hermes or DHL or Lloyds Bank or Deutsche Bank for that matter. It will then resolve or provide you with all of the domains which contain that same structural content which is effectively then potentially a force multiplier for domain trust, because we're not only then picking up the domain that's been reported to us or observed, but we might be finding the ones that are latent, that are waiting to be used as part of a campaign. And again, looking around the timing side of things, certainly it was apparent to me when I was using those tools to find structurally similar content that some of them hadn't yet been utilized within an actual attack, a phishing attack against individuals, which for the registrar and registries community is a good opportunity to actually get on the front foot with some of these issues, and actually prevent harm from occurring in the first place.
And maybe just to round that out, and the risk of name dropping, in terms of our main board, GCA, one member is Sir Rob Wainwright, who used to run Europol, and the other is Scott Charney from Microsoft. So we've got some good conversations ongoing for domain trust, both with Europol, Interpol, and Microsoft DCU. Clearly, Microsoft DCU is very proactive in this space, but as one of the big global hosting providers, as Jonathan says, it's not all about just purely domains, but clearly you guys on this call get the bad rep quite often for this. It's about the hosting providers, it's about the telcos. Hence, I was pleasantly surprised. I thought this project would be all about law enforcement, registries, registrars. The amount of telcos, the amount of hosting providers who want to get involved in a project has been pleasing. But again, there's always the good folks who want to do the right thing, and then there's everybody else. So our argument here is to try and put as many wagons in a circle to get around the criminals as we can.
Mm-hmm. And I guess also we can say that the more people that participate, the less enthusiastic, or the less responsible actors become conspicuous by their absence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. So we do have a couple more questions. I have one here, which is of a more technical nature, and I apologize if you guys aren't able to answer it straight away. This is coming from one of our clients. So the question is, does the domain trust system use the public suffix list to protect domains that host third-party subdomains? So, I mean, this is... So, and I guess CentralNic has some skin in the game on this one, because obviously we started out many years ago offering registry services under .uk.com and a collection of others, and we have had a couple of occasions in the past where a very over enthusiastic security product, one of which was owned by the large corporation you just mentioned, Andy, chose to block every domain name under .uk.com because one of them happened to be malicious. So this is a kind of very narrow technical question. If you don't know what the public suffix list is, it's essentially a kind of community maintained list of domains that host domains for other people. So .uk.com is an example, but then there are others like Google usercontent.com and others like that.
Yeah, WordPress being a classic one.
That's a good example.
Yeah. So I mean, we rely on people sending us the data, so we don't hire analysts deliberately for this reason. The point of having 30 people, and there was a guy in the research gang in ICANN who used to be at Nominet, funnily enough, who we both said, if you're all staring at the same cloud from slightly different angles, you get much more of a 3D view. So we curate the data, we check that the people who are giving us the data are using the right methodology, and then we get the data via a JSON interface. So I'm not going to pour over 2.5 million domains. I like to think we've all got something better to do today. Although it is interesting, I do like playing with the data once in a while. So yeah, if people were sending as the example as a massive false positive, such as you said there, the system would detect that, and that's the point of the allow list, so that would shut it down. But I think, the WordPress is an example. If bad domain.wordpress. Whatever is causing an issue, we wouldn't look at taking down all of WordPress, so it wouldn't even flag that, if you like, kind of subdomain as suspicious. So, but I guess the long point of this ramble is, whether it's a domain, actually people have talked to us about URLs, and then obviously we're going into other data sets. We're reliant on the efficacy of the data that's sent to us, and then we're policing that those people are doing the right things. That's why we're super keen that everybody who joins the platform is a GCA partner. So we go through the partner onboarding process, so it's not just some random fly-by-night organization. We then go through signing the MOA, which is the rules of the club. And it's really to make sure that everybody who's connected behaves in the right kind of level. We use phrases like TLP Amber, so people respect the data. we make sure people aren't selling our data or abusing it. But once that happens, then that's really the rules to use the machine, and then we have the faith in the machine, and occasionally checking, well, all the time checking the dials that the machine is doing the right kind of thing. So I think in general that means where people are in that kind of suffix list, if there are bad apples in there, the bad apples should stand out as opposed to the whole domain environment.
Understood. I don't think that's a good answer, and I'm reassured. And it occurs to me what we should probably be doing is for all this kind of second level domains that we provide backend services for, that we put those into the whitelist so that we're
exactly. And without being too cheesy about it, in the slides we said what we've built here is a community, not just a platform. I mean, to be blunt, and our development director would hate me for saying this, but I think he'd acknowledge it. Building a database that holds 2.5 million domains with some JSON APIs isn't exactly rocket science. Getting people to use it and use it in the right way and want to be a coalition of the willing, again, another cheesy phrase there, that's the kind of tough bit, going to the GoDaddies, the VeriSigns, all of the communities out there, all of which we would love to join and sign up. But these are kind of ongoing conversations. That's the tough, hard yards. That's the the shoe leather and the Zoom conversations part of the conversation.
Okay. So I'm just going to look through some of the questions that are left. I think actually a lot of them have been answered in our discussions. There was one that was going to ask about whether the GCA provides any sort of practical support for domain takedowns. But from what you've just said, I think that it's the case that Domain Trust is purely just an information sharing platform. And
yeah, the only thing I'd like to say around that is clearly having a New York prosecutor and a police force as two of our founders. I mean, these people are trying to go after criminals. Subpoenas are being issued. Courts' doors are being knocked on. Again, it goes back to that scale. If the New York DA wants to subpoena somebody in the court of Virginia, etc., then it's a great conversation for one domain. I'd rather he has 40,000 other domains that are in the briefcase in the same conversation. So I think that's the bit where maybe it gets beyond it just being a platform, and I get back to the community point. But yeah, if we give the example of Netcraft's job is to go take domains down. We found, I think, ZoneFox in the States doing an equivalent. So we're working with those kind of people because that is their craft. And in fact, we've had some people say, we want you to guarantee you're going to take a domain down, GCA. And we're like, no, that's like asking your mailman to pay the gas bill for you. He delivers the gas bill. We're making sure the check goes back to the right person. So if you want somebody to take a domain down, please go pay Netcraft £500 or whatever it is, and they'll give you an SLA, etc. And then we'll get the data. So no, taking domains down isn't our business. Facilitating the industry and the community to do that absolutely is.
Okay.
In fact, originally, as Gavin knows, this was called the industrial scale domain takedown platform, and our lawyers and gang advised we should change it because it implies we're taking domains down, which of course we're not.
Okay, thank you, Andy. And I think that's probably all we have time for now. So yeah, I think I would like to think that anyone who's been watching this who's gone in with no knowledge at all of Domain Trust has now got a complete comprehensive knowledge, and would like to thank very much Andy and Jonathan from the Global Cyber Alliance for this very informative session.
No, thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you once again to all of our registry clients as well who have taken interest in this and have been listening to this conversation. So with that, I'll bring everything to an end, and thank you all once again.